sponsored by Squarespace. You read the title, I'll keep the intro short. No, I'm not talking about the Mulan situation where a female character dresses as a man. I'm talking about Fan Shuan, cisgender actresses playing straight cis male characters. Now that this video is banned on Twitter, let's just dive straight in. This is a story of Chinese opera, the 1911 revolution, and women being dudes in Chinese cinema. It's commonly known that Chinese opera features male performers in all roles, male or female. However, this tradition was, in fact, relatively recent. Back in the Yuan and Ming dynasties, when opera first emerged in China, female performers were very common. The problem was, in late dynastic China, men and women sharing a stage, dancing and flirting was seen as inappropriate. So in 1671, the Qing dynasty government banned women from the stage. It was only then the Chinese opera became a sausage fest. It's yet another Chinese tradition rooted in the patriarchal control, proving that drag queens are actually macho. After the Qing dynasty fell and the Republic of China was founded, the ban was dropped. And so, in the 1920s, a wave of actresses emerged, but not necessarily in opera. As the story goes, instead of staying in the male-dominated opera scene, actresses flocked to cinema, a new technology, in search of new opportunities. As a result, the silent film era was dominated by female stars like Ruan Lingyu and Ai Xia, outshining their male counterparts. And with the dominance came the reverse of what opera was doing. Sadly, most early Chinese films are either lost or badly damaged. So we'll fast forward to 1963 for our first example, The Love Eterned. Based on the folktale The Butterfly Lovers, this opera musical follows Zhu Yingtai, a girl who disguises herself as a boy to attend school. There, she falls in love with her classmate, a boy named Liang Shanbo, played by actress Ivy Ling Po. That's right, a straight romance played by two women. At first glance, it's hard to tell which character is female. That's because this is a Huang Mei opera film, a direct adaptation of opera theater popular from the 1950s to the 1970s. In Huang Mei opera, realism is secondary to the performative movement. See, Zhu holds her fan delicately, pinky raised, but Liang holds it lightly and firmly. The gestures are highly symbolic and require familiarity with the art form to decode. Naturally, there are also musical numbers, which are the true highlights of the film. Due to its roots in Chinese opera, cross-gender acting is very common in Huang Mei films. Boys play girls on stage, girls play boys on screen. The Dream of the Red Chamber, released in 1962, features actress Ren Jie as the male lead, though the character is traditionally somewhat feminine, justifying the casting. The trope also appears in early Cantonese features. An extreme example would be Sister Yuan. Yes, I know this movie looks like ass. Cantonese films were niche in the 1960s. In this 1963 movie, nearly all characters, regardless of gender, are played by women. Surprisingly, this was the more common practice. As mentioned, mixed gender casts were inappropriate. Well, if the entire cast is female, it wouldn't be a problem. There are many more examples from the 50s and 60s. Too Late for Divorce is an interesting case, as it is not an opera film and it stars 16-year-old Bruce Lee. In the film, Cantonese opera star Yam Kim-fai plays a male teacher. Watching Bruce Lee teaches her how to dance is kinda a surreal experience. Throughout her career, Yam Kim-fai specialized in male roles, appearing in many Cantonese opera films. But as stated before, these films are poorly preserved, so we'll give them an honorable mention and move on to contemporary cinema. By the way, up until maybe the 1950s, acting was seen as a low-life career in China. They were often as despised as sex workers, and the press would viciously expose their private life for entertainment. That's why established actors would take publicity into their own hands with Squarespace. After all, having a website helps build legitimacy. A fully customized website shows professionalism in ways social media simply cannot. It's also accessible to every fan around the world, perfect for a public figure. Successful actors may hire someone to code their website, but with Squarespace, that's only one of the many options. You can also start with a pre-made template and edit with the intuitive Fluid engine. To test it out, start your free trial at squarespace.com/accentthecinema. Use the code accentthecinema and you can get 10% off your first purchase. So, are you an actor, an artist, a musician, a drag queen? You are going to need a website. Visit squarespace.com/accentthecinema and start your free trial today. Enter the modern era. Since the 1980s, the popularity of opera has declined. Cross-gender roles in films became rarer, but never truly went away. For example, Anita Mui, whom you may recognize from Rumble in the Bronx, plays a king in the period romantic comedy Wu Yan. In this story, the king is a playboy who, whenever things go south, runs back into the arms of his capable but unattractive warrior wife. In other words, he's a douchebag. There is no reason for this role to be played by a woman, except Anita Mui is superb as the lovable jerk. After all, that's how his wife feels about him. She hates him, yet she can't help but love him. The funniest part is this scene in which the king disguises himself as a woman to spy on his wife. So we have a woman pretending to be a man, pretending to be a woman. Did I mention this movie was directed by Johnny To? Same director as this movie. Another example would be 12 Golden Dogs, a 2015 comedy film in which Sandra Ng plays a gigolo, complete with topless scenes. Props for pushing boundaries, but this movie sucks ass, so let's get to the feature presentation. If you are a Chinese viewer, there's one name you likely have been thinking this whole time. I'm, of course, talking about Brigitte Lin. In the world of cross-gender casting, none is as iconic as her version of Dongfang Bubai in the Swordsman's theme series. Except that is clearly a female character, right? Well, to explain that, we need to talk about Brigitte Lin. In the 80s and 90s, Brigitte Lin was often seen as the counterpart to Maggie Cheung. Maggie is energetic, feminine, sexy. Brigitte is cool, reserved, and handsome. Look, I'm not making this up. In the 1986 period drama Peking Opera Blues, Brigitte Lin plays a wealthy woman who spends most of the film in dashing male attire. She's handsome. I don't care who you are, girl, nobody's that straight, okay? That was Brigitte's on-screen image, a woman of androgynous beauty. So when she leaned into ultra-femininity, it was a bit of a role reversal. Now, in Swordsman, her character is a cult leader who, in mastering the forbidden martial arts, has voluntarily castrated himself. Rather than play into unique stereotypes, director Tsui Hak uses Brigitte's androgyny to bring out the character's ambiguity. After all, Dongfang Bubai is a complex character. He's ruthless and power-hungry, yet also a visionary leader, and a human with love and sorrow. This perfect combination of casting and story is what made Brigitte Lin's Dongfang Bubai such an iconic cross-gender performance. It was the first time a gender-ambiguous character is depicted as charismatic in Chinese cinema. Since then, many more versions of Dongfang Bubai would be cross-gender. Brigitte Lin returns to cross-gender roles one more time in Wong Kar-wai's Ashes of Time. There, she plays both Mu Rongyang and Mu Rongyin, a pair of brother and sister. I can gush about Brigitte for another hour, but we still have one more thing to go over. So, for now, let's move on. Buried within this essay was a joke about drag queens being macho. In the eyes of a feudal Chinese chauvinist, banning women from the stage was the masculine priority. The concept alone would cause misogynists today to spontaneously combust. I hope from that one silly example, we can see how malleable the concepts of gender and masculinity are. Still, we have a question. Why? Why is this important? What's the big deal with women playing men? To answer that, let's return to the early 1900s. At that time, Imperial China was unraveling. Stubbornly holding on to traditions, it has fallen behind, exploited by industrialized nations, colonized, flooded with opium. It was collapsing. That's why, in trying to establish a republic, revolutionaries and scholars studied Western philosophy and brought those ideas into Chinese culture. So began China's new pursuit, such as gender equality. It was a transgression on 2,000 years of imperial tradition to build a nation without an emperor. The revolution was successful and life became better. So it's unsurprising that cross-gender casting re-emerged during this era, as it too was a transgressive act. Injustice against women is maintained in the name of tradition, and this rebellion puts that tradition into question. As stated before, this only men on stage thing was but a blip in the history of Chinese opera theaters. It was imposed by a patriarchal government. Misogyny wasn't foundational to opera, it merely snuck its way in. Just as it was imposed, it could be challenged, it could be removed. That's exactly what these actresses did. They challenged tradition and dismantled it, and life got better. Besides, how can you say no to this? So, does the reverse exist? Do we have examples of dudes playing chicks? The answer is technically yes, but it's rare and usually played for laughs. Back when women migrated from opera to cinema, male actors never did so in significant numbers, so there were no actors to take on cross-gender roles. By the time cinema overtook opera, China has westernized enough to feel uncomfortable with men playing women. A conservative culture tends to be protective of the masculine image, but it's also a little unsavory for a man to take a job away from women. Still, gender-bending men are common in Chinese works beyond the world of TV and cinema. In Journey of Flower, there's a male character described as more beautiful than women. Sadly, the on-screen adaptations didn't make him a fanboy. Bunch of cowards. But I suppose Bridget Lin's Dongfang Bu Bai didn't emerge overnight. It was built on the long history of opera theaters and fueled by a revolution. Change is slow, is sometimes painful, but at the end, life gets better. That's why I have hope. One day, we'll get our fanboys.